Alright, good morning everyone. So for today, we'll be discussing the first module in our subject web designing. So welcome to our subject, my dear STEM 12A IS students. So before we start our discussion for today, for module 1, I am assuming that you were able to at least read or at least browse the module number 0, which is actually the course outline. So this is where I included all of the topics and all of the topics that we will be discussing for the entire semester. So makita nyo rin dito kung ano yung mga kailangan natin na for example, the softwares that we need to install in the latter part. So this section, this subject for this trimester is actually a very special subject for most of you guys, especially for those students who are currently or who opted for a face-to-face setup. Mas matututukan ko kasi kapag ka face-to-face setup. Pero don't worry, since kayo ng mga nandito na nasa online synchronous classes, okay lang din naman yan. Kasi nga, at least pwede nyo pa rin mapanood tong video na to right after our discussion or online synchronous classes. So, before anything else, I want to emphasize this part of the module number 0. Okay, the important resources for advanced reading. So, although this is not really required for you to finish or at least, browse, I strongly recommend to click or at least visit the following websites from time to time. Kasi ang focus kasi ng ating subject for the entire trimester is for us to design a very basic website yan, using HTML and CSS. So, pag HTML and CSS kasi, kailangan marunong tayo ditong, mag-code kahit konti. Alright, so we have here, I have the 4 resources for advanced reading. Especially if you have like enough time, you can just go ahead and enroll yourself dito sa may HTML tutorial natin. This is a free online classes. Yan, or MOOC, Massive Online Course, na pwede kayong mag-enroll dito. It actually can teach you how to do your basic HTML and CSS programming na rin. Pero optional lang po yan if you have some time. Pero I really recommend na at least marunong kayo or makapag-enroll kayo sa mga ganito na online courses na meron tayo. Okay? And on top of that, may I suggest na you actually subscribe to our YouTube channel because most of our discussions will be uploaded here in this YouTube channel, UC-ICT department. Yan. So if you have some time naman po, mag-subscribe lang tayo para at least na monitor nyo rin kasi may mga time na hindi ko na-upload sa Canvas yung video lesson natin. You might find it here in our UC-ICT department YouTube channel. Alright? So, let's go ahead and discuss or start with the discussion dito sa my web design module number 1 natin. So, as you can see, module number 1 actually talks about what we call the introduction to HTML and CSS. Okay? So, HTML and CSS. So, our target here is for us to create a very basic web page using HTML. And on top of that, we will be adding some styles to the web page na create natin. And that's why we will be working out with what we call the HTML markup languages and some good coding practices na meron tayo. Okay, so when we are creating a website or when we are planning to design a specific web page, okay, importante na marunong tayo dun sa tinatawag natin na HTML. Ano nga ba ang HTML? This is actually what we call the hypertext markup language. It is a markup language. A structured language that lets you identify common sections of a web page, such as the headings, the paragraphs, and lists with markup tags that define each section. Now, based on what we know so far in our everyday life, kasi diba we were exposed with the use of internet, diba? And every time we browse a specific website, alam natin na we can only access those websites by simply, having a connection or an internet connection. And with those websites, meron tayong tinatawag na World Wide Web in order for us to access a specific website. Now, according to the internetworldstats.com, the internet had over a billion users as of June, with more new users every day. And most using mobile devices such as those smartphones, tablets, to access to those preferred websites. So, since we are talking about websites, ano nga bang meaning ng website? To define website in a very easy way, websites are simply a collection of web pages. Web pages simply consists of what we called, or simply consists of what we called HTML and CSS codes. Okay, or markup tags, tinatawag natin. That's why when I say markup tags, from now on, I'm actually talking about the code that looks something like this. Itong H1 na nakikita nyo dito. The H element in the following code indicates that that the text is a first level heading. So, each website na nakikita natin all over the internet actually consists of what we call HTML language or HTML tags. And later on, pag-aaralan natin, ano nga ba yung mga HTML tags na yun. For example, we try to visit the google.com website, and if we right-click on the inspect or right-click anywhere and click on inspect element, makikita natin dito on the right side, yan, this is an example of an HTML tags. Yan, yung mga head, HTML, meta, script. Style is an example of CSS. Mga ganyan. So, we will try to at least achieve or create a web page that uses the following. Okay? So, yan. Let's umpisa tayo. Web pages are simply text documents that use HTML to tell the browser how to display each document section. Now, this figure here show a very basic web page and the code on the right side that is used to create it. Now, if you examine the HTML example in the figure, you see that the web page code is a mixture of the text the user sees in the browser, surrounded by a variety of markup elements. In HTML, okay, an element is a pair of HTML tags containing content. Now, we have here another figure that shows the syntax of an HTML element. So, remember, every time you create an HTML tag, we have to start with a start tag na tinatawag natin. We can do that by simply putting here the HTML tag. Okay? The H, for example, stands for heading. Yan. Pero before that, you have to enclose that with the less than and greater than symbol. Yan. That's the start tag. And in between the start tag and what we call the end tag is where we will be placing the content text naman. So in this case, the end tag, if you notice, there is actually a slash before the tag itself. Itong /h1 na to. This simply means that you are trying to tell the web page that the what is HTML text actually is a heading from the start of the W letter up to the question mark element. Okay? Ngayon, kapag hindi nyo nilagyan kasi yan ng backslash or ng slash, hindi magpapakita yung gusto nyong maipakita. Okay? Hindi magpapakita yung gusto nyong style or gusto nyong output sa may web page natin. Now, some HTML elements contain only a single tag. And these are known as what we call the void elements because they contain no content. Rather, they insert something onto the page, such as new line, using the BR element. Later on, mapapakita ko sa inyo ano nga bang ibig sabihin ng BR. Pero for your information, that is actually a break element or a next line element. Now, void elements use only the opening tag, never an ending tag. And each HTML elements determine how the content will be organized and displayed in the browser. Say, for example, the H element creates a bold heading for any text it contains, and other HTML elements describe other types of text. H stands for heading, P stands for paragraph. Okay. Now, yung pinakita ko kanina na website, 'di ba? Yung W3 Schools. It's really important for us to always take a look. Okay? Always visit this, this website for you to have an idea how those tags that I'm going to introduce are working. Okay? So for example here, in this case, if you click on the introduction part of the HTML tutorial here, makikita nyo kung ano nga ba yung mga tags na introduce ko sa inyo. We have here the heading, we have here the paragraph. Okay, we have here the BR or the break line. Mamaya, punta tayo dyan. Now, some HTML elements supports what we call attributes. Now, the attributes actually let us, put some more information about the tag that you indicated. So, for example, in this one, H1 simply stands for heading. Yan. Diba? The first heading. Now, ID simply means that you are trying to add an attribute to the heading. Ito, kumbaga, the heading, you are trying to put a specific name, class name, to the heading that you have created. Yan. So, ang title ng heading na ilalagay mo dito, if, for example, main title. And in the latter part of our series or of our courses, pwede na natin kasing tawagin ngayon si main title na ID from the top up to the bottom na part ng webpage natin. Yan, di ba? Another example here, the src attribute for image. It is actually added in bold to the image element to tell the browser which image to display. So using the img tag, we have put here an src element or attribute with the pretty picture.jpg na URL naman or path nung mismong image na gusto mong ilagay sa webpage mo. Okay? Attributes are always placed in the start of tag or in the start tag of an HTML element. They are expressed in the form of a name and a value. And the value should always be in quotes as shown in the two previous examples. Yan. Now, let's talk about the structure of a basic web page. Again, we are talking about basic web page only. An HTML file includes the text that the user sees in the browser contained within HTML markup elements that the user cannot see. Now, so for example, in this figure here, makikita natin that this is actually the structural element in a very basic web page. So first of all, we have here the doc type. Okay, it simply specifies the rule for the document. Since we are using HTML, hindi rin masyadong required ito eh. Ako honestly hindi ako nasanay. Pero majority of web pages nowadays put doc type statement. Yan. It simply specifies the rules for the document language. Next, we have here the head element. Now, I mean the entire HTML element. Ito muna pala. Itong HTML. So, as you can see, the HTML tag, the start tag, always ends with an ending tag as well. And we put here a slash symbol. Diba? This simply indicates that the entire document here is an HTML document. Next is what we call the head element. Yan. Ang ginagamit natin dyan is the head, followed by, of course, the closing or the end tag. So inside the head tag is where we will be putting the title element. The title element is simply the title of the web page. Siya po yung nakikita natin madalas dito. Ito, diba? Introduction to HTML. Ito yun. Itong part na to. Yun yung title. Diba? And meta element, which is simply, the meta or the way how your web page or browsers can read your entire document. Okay. Now, a root element is the container element for all other elements in the document. So, after kasi dito natin after ng head natin, we have the body. The body is where we'll be placing all of the information or the details of our web pages. So, in this case, we have the heading. Yeah, we have H1 as the heading. And we have P as paragraph. And so, kung napansin natin, we have H1 start tag and H1 end tag. We have paragraph start tag and paragraph end tag. Now, in order for us to create a very basic HTML document, let's try to follow this activity. Okay? So, in-upload ko kasi ito itong ch1 activity1.html in our canvas. So, I want you guys to go to your canvas. Nasaan ba yung web tech natin? Now, let's download the HTML1 activity. Ito. Download natin ito. So, for the HTML1 activity, in your text editor, we will be opening the ch1 activity1.html and examine the code. So, how are we going to do that? First of all, let's open what we call Notepad. Itong Notepad na to. The very basic way on how to open a simple web page is by simply dragging and dropping the file, yung ch1 activity.html. Ayan. So, kung napansin nyo, nung drinag ko siya, ayan, diba? Nung drinag ko siya, nakita na natin yung content ng ch1activity1.html. Now, in order for us to save this, especially when you are starting a new document, just go to File, go to Save As, make sure that the Save As Type button here is selected as all files, and you have to make sure that the file name has its extension of .html. Okay, so hahanapin na natin yan, no? Hahanapin natin yan. Ilagay ko lang muna yan dito. So in this case, I saved the file somewhere in the desktop. In my desktop, ch1, ito. So you have to make sure that the open with here is set to Google Chrome or any browsers you prefer. Pwedeng Mozilla Firefox, pwedeng Microsoft Edge or anything. So in this case, I prefer using Google Chrome. Now, you will notice that once you double click this one, nothing happens. Diba? Pero it simply opened an entirely new web page, but with no content. And if you right click anywhere and you click on inspect element here, makikita nyo dito kung ano yung HTML code na meron. Diba? So that's actually the foundation of what we will be doing for the entire semester. Mag-i-start tayong gumawa ng napaka-basic na webpage using this framework that we have. So for now, syempre, Notepad muna ang gamitin natin for the editing. Yan. Diba? Now, let's try to examine this one. We have the doc type. We have the HTML tag. We have the head tag. Ito. Itong head tag na to. We have the body. Yan. Now, add the title element with the title for your document and a meta element that defines the document type as shown in the blue in the following code. So, every time nag-edit tayo, pwede naman nating i-edit yan dito. Diba? So, again, create ka muna ng start and ending tag ng element natin. So, for example, I would like to title na my first webpage. Yan. And Control S to save. Control S mo lang yan to save. Make sure na start tag, tapos yung end tag naka-slash siya na ganyan. Tapos sa loob siya ng head. Now, if you will try to refresh this one, ang pinaltan lang natin or dinagdag natin is the title. Kung napansin nyo, nag-change yung title dito sa may upper right portion. Diba? Dito. So, every time you are trying to change the title here, yan, dito sa may notepad editor natin, nag-change din yung title dito. Nagets ba natin? Okay. So, next is for us to add the meta element. Yung meta element, this is actually optional. Pero, for the sake of this class, lagay na natin ngayon pa lang. So, meta as the starting tag with a script, or I mean with an attribute, which is a content type. Ayan. Tapos yung content natin is equal to text, for example. Text HTML. Tapos followed by the semicolon, and I would like to set the character set as UTF-8 para mabasa niya lahat. Yan. Napakasimple, di ba? Meta. Ganyan lang siya. Void yan. As is lang siya na ganyan. So, let's try to save. Nothing will happen actually. Yan. Nothing will happen. Pero, you just simply put an attribute to the entire property or of the entire web page itself. Next is for us to add an H1 element with the heading for the document. Now, the H1 element, the heading document, is actually can be placed inside the body itself. Dito, sa loob ng body. So, every time kasi na naglalagay ka dyan ng H1, starting and end tag, yan. Meron tayong, halimbawa, yung word na gusto mo ipakita, the World Wide Web. Yan. So, Control S mo to save, tapos refresh mo dito, and there you go. This is actually your very first web page na ginawa mo. So, the good thing about this one is that every time you add an H element or a heading element, yan, so for example, maglalagay tayo dito ng panibagong heading, panibagong ganyan. My name is Jezreel. H1. Tapos save mo ulit. Ayan, automatic, di ba? So we have three different types of heading. We have H1, H2, and H3. I am from UC. So, ganyan siya. And, di ba? The heading, kung napansin nyo, they actually changed, the sizes of those headings changed. So this is the biggest heading, the H1, and H2, and H3. Understood? Next, let's try to add 2 paragraphs of the content. Now, ang paragraph natin dito, halimbawa gusto natin maglagay ng song lyrics, di ba? Now, if you would like to add a paragraph, ganun din. Just simply put here paragraph, then the end tag paragraph. Something like that. And look what will happen if we try to add a lyrics here. We don't talk about Bruno, for example. No, no, no. Yan. So make sure ha, may start tag, may end tag ka lagi. Yan. So the paragraph or the P element here looks something like this. Hindi siya naka-bold, 'di ba? Pero napakasimpleng ganyan lang siya. So if you would like to add another lyrics here, say for example, kung maglalagay tayo dito ng or mag-search tayo ng lyrics sa ano natin. For example here, let's try to search for lyrics. Ano ba ito? Let's copy that and paste that here. Look what will happen. Ayun. 'Di ba? Kung napansin natin, once we added the paragraph here, hindi natin nasunod yung gusto nating mangyari na in which, say for example, this one is in a single line. Ang nangyari dito, everything is actually in single line. Ayan, no? So, kapag zoom out ko, nagaganyan. Because we added the markup language or the markup tag paragraph at the start of the lyrics up to the end of the lyrics. So, therefore, na-convert to into a paragraph. If we would like to add if we would like to convert this into a lyric type, we can just simply convert the end tag dito. So, meaning, ito yung as one paragraph. Let's add another paragraph here that looks something like this one. Maglagay ulit tayo dito ng P and another P. Tapos, lagay ulit tayo dito ng another P and another P. I'm trying to put markup paragraphs per line. Ayan, di ba? So, P. Tapos, lastly, the P. Save natin yan. Ayan, di ba? So, ganun ang style ng paragraph natin. Naintindihan po ba natin? That is how HTML HTML works. Napakadali lang, no? Do you have any questions so far? Okay. So, say for example, gusto mo ngayong maglagay ng lists. Yan. Ng lists. It's actually, or yung bulleted list form natin. So, we can just simply do that by putting here, for example, I have like a heading, my favorite Encanto characters, for example. So, magiging H1 siya, di ba? Tapos, sa loob nito, let's put here an untitled list. Yan. An untitled list muna, UL muna. Tapos, sa loob nito, lalagay natin dito is yung LI, meaning lists na siya. Ayan. So, for example, I would like to put here like Mirabel, Isabella, and Bruno, Abuela, for example. Diba? Tapos, save nyo siya. Then, refresh nyo lang ulit yung webpage nyo. Ayun. Diba kung napansin nyo, nung naglagay tayo ng LI, lists, automatic na naglagay siya ng bullet form dito. Pero, let's try to remove the UL here. Let's try to differentiate. So, tandaan yung itsura niya na ganyan. Nung tinanggal ko yung UL, Ayun. So, the untitled list or the UL element here simply add some indentation to that one. Diba? Naglagay siya ng indentation. Diba? Binalik ko yung UL, nagkaroon ng indentation. Para mas maayos yung itsura ng ano natin. Diba? Question so far? So, we added here lists. Ayan. So, for adding comments, napakadali lang naman maglagay ng comment. Just simply use this tag here. Ang comments po, hindi po nakikita yan, no? Comments are actually a good practice for, for any programming languages to simply put or simply mark up the parts of your HTML pages. So, for example, kung maglalagay ako dito ng comment, pwede kong lagyan lang yan ng ganyan. This is the part blah 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 blah. Yan. Diba? Itong nilagay mong this is the part na yan, once you run or refresh the webpage, hindi yan magpapakita dito. Kasi comment lang yan eh. Ayan na. Comment lang yan. Kung napansin nyo dito sa may HTML element natin dito, ganyan na siya. Diba? There are lots of ways or there are some other HTML tags that we can actually add. Let's visit this website. Pwede tayong maglagay dito ng, for example, maglagay tayo ng, ayan, may heading na tayo, may paragraph. For example, links. What are links? Links are actually destinations. See, for example, gusto kong maglagay dito sa part na to na once I click on something, like click here, pupunta siya sa Facebook ko or any website, for example. Ayan. Lagay tayo dito ng, palitan natin tong heading na to. Would like to put this or convert this into click me. And i-ano ko lang ito. Iusin ko lang para makita nyo. Yan, click me. Now, if we would like to add a link to it, we can just simply put here the A tag. Yan. Pero this time, you have what we call the Href attribute. And so this simply converts, a specific part of your web page into a clickable link. So pagka pinindot ko si word na click me mismo, refresh natin yan, save natin to. Let's refresh this. Yan, nagkaroon na siya ng underline, meaning it's clickable. Now, if you click on this one, there you go. Diba? Either pupunta siya sa panibagong website or lagay tayo ng complete URL dito. Or anything. Diba? So in this case, ayan. So, pwede tayo maglagay dito ng ganyan. Pero sa ngayon, hindi lang siya nagpapakita, no? Pero okay lang yan. That's actually how Href actually works in this scenario. So, copy natin nga itong link na to. Baka ito yung mag-work. Yan, HTTPS. Let's refresh this. There you go. So, nung clinic ko to, yan, nagpakita siya dito. Pumunta siya dito. So, if you would like to put your Facebook link, facebook.com, Jezreel Ian, Cruz Manuel. If this is a valid URL, click natin yan, pupunta siya sa Facebook. Diba? So, ganun po siya. Now, if you would like to convert a specific part of the element, for example, yung me lang ang gusto kong clickable, I can now just simply copy or put the A tag before the me word. Ayun, di ba? Ang clickable lang is yung me. Nakuha ba natin? Okay. You can also add some more things, HTML things, such as image. Now, for the image, take note that every time you are planning to add an image, tandaan nito ha, pag gusto nyo maglagay ng image, you have to make sure that the image that you are trying to put is placed inside where your ch1 activity or your HTML file is located. So, in this case, desktop. Tapos gusto kong, for example, ilagay ito. Image. Now, you have to make sure to check the properties of the image. Yan. Punta ka dito usually sa my details and the name. Because the name here is actually the one you will copy. So, for example, dito sa may after ng H3 natin, gusto kong maglagay dito ng image. I can just simply put here img, okay, the img tag with a property of src, tapos inside the double quotation mark is where we will be putting the name of the image I would like to place. So in this case, image.png according here. Tapos, for now, ganyan muna siya. For now, ganyan muna. Yan. This is a void element, so no need for ending tag. Let's try to refresh kung magpapakita yung image. Pakita ba yung image? Parang hindi nagpakita. Nagpakita, pero the size is actually too big. Ha? Napakalaki nung size, kaya halos hindi makita. Diyan ngayon papasok yung other properties natin, such as the width and the height. So in this case, the width and the height here, I can just simply put a width of like around 60 pixels, and a height of around 60 pixels as well. So kapag ka ni-refresh natin yan na natin to, masyado pa rin palang malaki, no? With height. Okay. So dapat tama yung ano mo yung spelling kasi hindi yan magpapakita. Ayun, hindi nga nagpakita, no? Tanggalin ulit natin image.png kasi nakalimutan natin ng double quotation. Ayun. There you go. So, nagpakita. Di ba? So, andun na siya yung image natin. Now, if you would like to put another image, you can just simply go ahead and like download another image, any image you want. Say, for example, meron tayo ditong ito ICT logo natin. I can just simply put them here, or wag na lang ICT logo. For example, like a GIF. Sige, meron akong GIF dito, sample. Ito. This is a sample GIF, no? So, the name is CSS cover. Okay. So, we have here IMG, and tapos, lagyan natin dyan. Then, so for example, wag muna natin lagyan ng size. Tignan natin kung anong itsura muna. Ayan siya. Diba? So, therefore, yes, you can also add an image or a GIF image dito. So, kung napansin nyo, palakihin natin ng konti itong width natin and height of the image. Yan. Kung napansin nyo, palakihin pa natin para mas maganda itsura. 210. Yan. Kung napansin nyo, di ba? Yung image na to, magkatabi sila on the right. If you would like to place an image or any element in the web page sa next line, again, we can simply use what we call the BR element. Di ba? BR element. Ayan o. Kumbaga break line yan eh. Nagni-new line ka. Nakuha ba natin? Question so far? BR po ang element para ilagay mo yung panibagong element just in the new line itself. Alright? So, you already know how to create a very basic web page. Again, please do visit this website to, to study or have an advanced reading on how other elements are working. Next, let's continue our discussion here. Ito, yung HTML in the browser, I already introduced this to you that we can actually use any browser, diba? Like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Opera, and many more. Now, let's talk about here the way on how we add a style. Ang style kasi, we can do that, we can achieve that by simply using what we call the CSS or cascading style sheets. To add presentation information to web pages, web designers use a style language called CSS. Now, with the CSS, you can display information for different devices such as smartphone, tablets, or even computer screen. Layout, page designs and control, typography, the color, and many other presentation characteristics. So, if we would like to add here some design dun sa main, napaka-basic, di ba? Napaka-common, napaka-dull, walang itsura. If you would like to make or convert the entire HTML web page here into a somehow colorful looking web page, like this time with some design, with some colors and anything, diyan papasok na yun si CSS. The style sheet is a set of style rules that describes the display characteristics of a document. Now, the style rules express the style characteristics for an HTML element. With style sheets, the presentation properties are separate from the content. This accommodates a variety of the devices and the users that browse the web. So for example, in this figure, the way on how we format data for multiple destinations, you have here the HTML data that we have created earlier, and you have here the CSS, the style sheets. It can provide some different presentation depending on the client that we have. So either for the web browsers, for laptops and tablets, for print outputs, magkakaiba rin sila. Okay? CSS lets you control the presentation characteristics of an entire website with a single style sheet document. Now, for example, assume that you want all of your headings. Yan, kung gusto mo lahat ng headings mo, di ba? All of your headings in this case, yan, to appear green and centered everywhere on your website, you can just simply use a CSS rule, yan, by putting the H1, this code here. Okay? So, the CSS style section, itong part na to, nandito siya sa loob ng head. Mamaya, gagawin natin yan. Nandito siya sa loob ng head after the meta element. Okay, so you can place this rule in what we call the external style sheet, or I prefer the inline CSS, yung mga internal lang. Dito lang muna sa loob ng HTML para hindi tayo mahirapan, no? Now, let's try to at least revisit the web page shown in the figure here. Yung kanina, yung 1.7 natin. Ito. Okay? Adding some simple CSS code adds style to the element page. Notice that the style section in figure 1.9, itong style section natin na to, specify that the body text for the page will be Arial, heading will have a button border, and the paragraph will have a pixel left margin. So, for the CSS syntax, this is actually a very wide topic then, aside from the HTML. So, this is also, I strongly suggest for everyone to browse the CSS tutorials na nakalagay doon sa mismong webpage natin. So, nakalagay kasi dito kung ano yung mga style sheets na pwede nating magamit or the demo. And so this is how a web page, a very simple web page, looks like when we add a CSS. Diba? So let's try to create or do this activity. Yan. Pero ito kasi yung CH1 activity 2, no? Pero gamitin pa rin natin, gagamitin ko pa rin si CH1 activity 1. Now, we can just simply add a style rule to our HTML document by simply putting what we call the style tag on the head. Dito sa head natin. Okay? Dito sa head. After mismo na yung meta. Yeah, so we have style. We have style here. Ganyan siya. Now, for the style type, we will be putting here a text CSS. And this simply means that we are telling our browser that we will be using a CSS or cascading style sheets. So, text CSS. Now, for example, gusto mong lagyan lahat ng, so for example, for the body, you would like to convert the entire body, lahat ng ito, to have a font of Arial. Yan. We can just simply put here, remember, yung body ang sinusubukan mong lagyan ng property, no? So, hindi siya tag, pero code na siya, statement na siya, na ganyan. So, you have here the body, and this time, you will be putting here the font family, indicating the font family, which is in Arial. Tapos, sans serif na siya. And make sure na, since this is inside a body statement or block na tinatawag natin, always end the statement in semicolon. Okay? So, font family Arial, is ganyan. So, dito, nakikita nyo lang na naka-single line lang siya. Kasi, alam mo yun, para mas magandang tignan, ganyan. Pero in the point of view of a programmer, especially ako kasi nasanay ako na pag nagdi-design akong webpage, nakaganyan yung itsura, naka-indent siya. Diba? Anyways, tuturuan ko kayo kung paano mag-indent one of these days ng maayos. Once na nag-introduce na ako ng software sa inyo. So, let's go back dito Initially, this is how your web page looks like, 'di ba? So kapag gusto natin siyang lagyan ng or change yung font mo into Arial, refresh mo lang, ayun, nag-change yung font mo into Arial. Everything, 'di ba? Everything. So, kung gusto mo na ngayon lagyan ng, for example, gusto mo ngayong maglagay ng background color doon sa may body mo, you can just simply put another property here, which is background. Yan, color. Inside the body ito tapos light blue. Diba? Ganyan lang siya. Tingnan natin. Ayun, nag-light blue na siya, no? Or, pwede rin kasing ganito. Like, another body, pag ganyan naman siya. Kumbaga, dinoble mo, pero hindi siya magandang tignan. Pero possible pa rin naman. Ayan, di ba? Possible pa. Pero ako kasi, I always prefer na kapag yung buong body lang ang gusto kong, alam mo yun, i-modify or lagyan ng property, ando na, sa isang block na siya. Diba? Now, say for example, gusto mo ngayong maglagay ng line or yung border bottom natin dito sa may H1 natin. Again, we can do that by simply, this time, you are trying to tell your web page na, hey, I'm trying to modify or add a property to my H1. So, this time yung H1 naman. So, maglalagay ako dito ng border, bottom, tapos solid thin, in this case. Now, if we refresh this one, ayun. Lahat ng heading number 1, nagkaroon ng border bottom. Ayun siya. Diba? You can still go to this website and try to check the other styles na meron tayo. Diba? Continue natin. Ayan. Solid thin. Pwede mo rin siyang pwede mo rin siyang i-change. Pwede mong, like for example, kung solid lang. Ayan. Diba? Pwede. Kung gusto mo rin yung H2, merong ganyan din, border. Pwede rin. Diba? So, this time, ito, ganyan, solid, thin. So, lahat ng H2, ayun. So, ito. Now, question. Paano kung gusto kong palitan yung color? Or yung font color naman? Pwede. So, go to this colors, CSS color dito. Maglagay tayo ng itong text color natin. So, ganyan pala siya, no? Color tomato. So, say for example, yung H1, gusto kong palitan ng color. Ganyan lang. Color tomato. Ayun, di ba? Nag-change siya. Paano kung gusto kong specific naman yung color na gagamitin natin? Iba ring usapan yun. Ito yun, yung mga RGB values natin. Yan. Diba? So, saka natin pag-aaralan yan. Pero just for your information, pwede ka pong maglagay ng specific colors na gusto mong gamitin. Gamit nga tayo dito ng, halimbawa, blue. Blue. Ayun, pwede. Diba? Pero yung tomato, okay. Paano kung gusto kong lagyan ng background or i-change yung background color naman ng text natin? So, again, from this website, pwede kang maglagay ng background color. Ayan, no? So, you can just simply copy this one. Halimbawa, gusto ko lahat ng H1. Don't forget to add the semicolon. Yan. Then, save, tapos refresh. Ayan, diba? Nag-change. Naglagay tayo ng background color. Paano kung gusto ko lahat ng paragraph ko ngayon, lagyan ko ng background color? Ganun din. So, paragraph. So, this time, let's add a background color. Something like that. And there you go. So, lahat po ng, diba? So, lahat ng paragraph natin nilagyan ng background colors. Diba? Ang saya ng CSS, no? Napakadaming pwedeng magawa. So, try to play around. Ito, click nyo itong try it yourself from time to time para ma-experience ninyo kung ano yung mga pwede pa nating magawa. And there are lots of things you can do here in this website as well. Alright, so continuing. Organizing information with what we call the hypertext. The most engaging aspect of browsing the web is the linking of information on related topics using what we call the hypertext. Yung hypertext naman, ito yung links natin. Pwede kasi tayo maglagay ng links ngayon, di ba? A non-linear way of organizing information. When using a hypertext system, you can jump from one related topic to another, quickly find the information that interests you, and return to your starting point or move into another topic. As a web designer, you determine which terms to create as hypertext links on where users end up when they click a link. Now, punta tayo dito sa ginawa natin. Say for example, if I click me, gusto kong pumunta siya sa panibagong webpage. So, nabanggit ko sa inyo na that is possible by using a Href. Pero paano kung gusto kong pumunta ngayon siya sa isa pa, diba? Sa isa pang webpage. For example, let's download the ch1activity2.html. Yan. I would like to copy this one here sa my desktop. So, same ano sila, no? So, this time, using the ahref, I can now just simply put inside the double quotation the exact name of the web page na gusto kong puntahan niya once I click on that. Diba? So, ano ko nga to? Ayun. So, click me, pumunta siya sa ch1 activity 2 na. Now, if gusto ko ulit i-modify si ch1 activity 2 in such a way na meron tayong ilalagay na go back, for example, dito. Sa loob na to. Like paragraph siya. Ayan. Go back. Ayan. So, maglagay din tayo dito ulit ng href. Tapos, end tag href. Tapos, sa loob nito is ch1 activity1.html. ch1 activity1.html. Okay. So, tingnan natin. Balik tayo dito. Pinakaumpisa. Click on me. Tapos, meron ka ng go back button here. Click nyo ulit yan. Babalik dito. Yeah? So, nagiging website na siya. Take note, websites are simply collection of web pages. So, in the latter part, gagawa tayo kasi ng talagang legitimate web page or website na clickable na lahat. Diba? May hyperlinks na tayo na tinatawag. Diba? Amazing. Okay. So, when we are trying to create an HTML document, we have to follow the 5 basic rules to, create syntactically correct HTML code. Number 1, documents must be well-formed. A well-formed document is one that adheres to the syntax rules described in this section. Yung doc type HTML natin. Ba? Now, the second one is all tags must nest properly and not overlap. So, if you started with a tag, you have to make sure to end the tag. So, in this case, yung some text natin na word is inside the P, the paragraph. Pero, naka-emphasize siya into strong element. So, yan. You have to make sure to nest them properly. The closing tag for the strong element must come before the closing tag for the paragraph element. So, the correct nesting syntax is as follows. Ito. So, the outer HTML tag is paragraph. That's why the outer end tag is also paragraph. The inner tag is strong. That's why the inner ending tag is also strong. Something like that. Diba? Next, you have to use all lowercase for element names. So even though HTML allows uppercase and lower cases, it is considered good coding practice to always use lower cases. Always use closing tag, another practice. Okay? Kasi kung napansin nyo, kung walang closing tag ang mga HTML tags natin, hindi yan magpapakita na maayos. Try to remove the closing tags of each paragraph na meron ka or any HTML tags in your document. Tingnan nyo, hindi magpapakita na maayos yan. Okay? Next, attribute values must be contained in quotation marks all the time. Okay? So, attributes, once again, ito po yung mga ito. Yung class, ID, src for image, and everything. You have to make sure to put a double quotation mark. Ayan. Next, Using HTML5 elements for page structure. Now, all web pages share some common characteristics. For example, most web pages have some type of a header, ito, diba? Navigation article, and a figure content. Yan. We also have footers. We also have sidebars for related content. Until recently, most web pages were marked up using a combination of div elements and ID or class name as shown in figure 1.6. Ito, introduce ko sa inyo the next meeting, pero we can actually put a name or divide those parts of your web page. So for example, kung gusto mo yung buong header, pangalan niya is header, possible na yan. By simply adding here, the div, yan, or the div ID. Ito mga to. Maglalagay ka na ngayon ng pangalan ng mga parts ng web pages mo. The ID name shown in figure 1.6 may vary, but generally all of the page components shown occur in one form or another. Parang ito. Diba? So, i-ano yan natin, gagawin natin yan one of these days kung paano talaga mag-design ng structure ng website natin. So, HTML now offers a new sets of elements for describing document structure. So, in the past, HTML authors used the division element, which is ako actually hanggang ngayon ginagamit ko pa rin to structure the page. Yan. So, it's a neutral element and it's intended only as a container for any content. Yan. Such as div article, yung nandito, di ba? Pero, using HTML, the web page shown in figure 117 can now be marked up as shown in this figure. So, meron ka na ngayon tinatawag na, ito, yung, this is actually a new version of HTML. So, instead of us adding the division or the div, pwede ka na ngayon maglagay ng mismong header element para indicate mo yung header part mo as a header. So, the HTML elements that are designed for page layout includes the following. We can now add header. Yan. We can now add the navigation elements, article, section, aside, figure, and footer. So, lahat gagamitin natin yan. Pero, introduce ko lang sa inyo ngayon, pero hindi pa talaga natin gagamitin for now. Okay? Now, these elements offer benefits for building page layouts. They standardize the naming conventions for parts of a web page, allowing software tools to apply consistent rules as well for content management in particular, yan, presentation, and processing. Now, using good coding practices, kasi in the past, those web designers wrote the non-standard employing a whatever works mentality to trick the browser into presenting the results. So, ako kasi, personally, ganyan din ako dati. Basta makita ko na gumagana siya sa web page ko, okay na. So, for example, I'm using a heading. Yan, so solely for their font sizes rather than using a logical heading, meaning adding logical headings, meaning like you will now indicate the exact font sizes, the font colors, and everything. Diba? So instead of a container for data, they were intended. So these are bad habits, okay, that are best left behind. Now, this part actually provides the following guidelines for creating code that ensures the greatest standards, compliance, presentation, and usefulness of your content. We have here, number 1, stick to the standards. Whenever we stick to the standards, it's actually the best way to create well-coded websites. Okay? So, in order for us to do that, we have to strictly follow the standard sets set by the WC or the website, the W3C. This approach provides the greatest acceptance and most uniform display of your content across multiple browsers and operating systems. Now, this best practices method of coding is widely supported among websites that are interested in the widest accessibility. Next is what we call the semantic markup. Ang semantic markup naman is actually descriptive markup that identifies the intended use of document sections. Semantic markup accurately describes each piece of content. Makikita natin to kasi once na mas na-expose tayo sa coding or sa HTML coding natin, mas matututo tayo kung paano mas maging maayos yung codes natin, especially using the semantic markups. And lastly, we can, validate our code. Pero unfortunately, as of the moment, down yung website in which we can validate our code. Okay? So, sa future, tuturo ko kung paano nga ba natin i-validate yung code natin. We can just simply copy and paste the entire code in a certain website, tapos i-determine ng website na yun kung okay ba or ano yung mga suggestions para mas maging maayos pa yung code mo. Alright? So, any questions so far before we proceed with our written work? Wala naman. Okay, so for your written work, you only have 2 items, very basic. So, please download the CH1 Project 5 HTML. Diba? So, nandito siya. 5 and 6. Ayan. You have to examine the code, replace your name in the content at the bottom of the page, in the comment, okay, with your first and last name. So, susundan nyo lang siya. So, it will now look something like this. So, pinakita natin kung paano gawin to. Gawin nyo lang ulit. Now, in the second activity or in the second part of the written work, you add CSS to a basic HTML5, pero this time you using the CH1 Project 6 HTML from your canvas. So, you have here the color, tapos yung border natin, and anything. So, make sure to add the style element within the head element. Now, this is actually one of the challenging part of this module. So, you have here a case project. You have to create a complete standalone website. That's your entire target for the entire semester. Now, the site must have 6 to 10 pages that display at least 3 levels of information. You can choose your own content. Again, you can choose your own content for this performance check. So, for example, you can focus on a work-related topic, create a personal interest site, or design a site for your favorite nonprofit organization. Now, you have to propose or create a 1 or 2 page HTML document for this performance check only. Okay? Kasi project proposal ito. Gagawa kayo ng website ninyo na sarili. So basically, you will think of a topic or anything, like for example, gaming, your personal hobbies, interests, your vlog, everything. Okay? Listing the basic elements you will include in your website. So you have to create this document using your favorite HTML editor or notepad. And this is basically a draft. Okay? So for face-to-face classes, titingnan ko ito for the next meeting. Okay? Pwede nyo kasi itong magawa within 30 minutes. Now, at the end of the module 2, you will have a chance to modify the proposal. So, gagawa lang kayo ng basic HTML document. If you want to add some style to it, go ahead. So, you have to include the following items. The site title. Ano nga ba yung magiging site title nyo? Who will be the developer? Your name, of course. The rationale or focus. You have to explain the content and goals of the site. Okay? You also need to put the main element outlines. Okay? So, ano nga ba yung mga main features ng site mo? May image ba? May video ba? Diba? And everything. You also have to put the content, estimate the number of individual pages. You also have to put the target audiences. Yan. Describe the typical audience. The design consideration, the design goals for this site. If you are planning to create a colorful website or a minimalistic approach website or anything. Again, draft pa lang naman ito, pero 1 or 2 page HTML document na to. Limiting factor, so no need for you to put any fancy designs as of the moment. Now, you have to make sure to upload your HTML document in Canvas, and this is a 30-point activity. Pero aside from that, I added here, you have to make sure to add or, upload your HTML document. Parang, hindi ko na nilagay yung isa pa. Okay? So, yun lang naman po ang ating ngayon. Do you have any questions so far before we end our discussion, our class for today? Gawin nyo to ha, madali lang naman ito. Kung paano natin inumpisahan to, kanina, ganun din siya gagawin. Alright, so thank you so much for listening and see you guys this week for face-to-face classes, next week for the online synchronous classes. Goodbye everyone.